Guys, Xenia here, one of your EXMD 2362 tutors. Today I'm going to talk about group training and how we can look into this and how we might do it ourselves, especially in the times of virtual. So there's a couple of things we're going to talk about. Some will pertain to virtual, some will pertain to just regularly when things go back to normal. For considerations. So in terms of what we start with, what we want to think about first, it's the type of training that you want to be doing. So are you going to be prescribing circuit-based things where people are going from one station to another and they're just doing their own sort of individual training and working around in a circle? Will you maybe work people in partners? So they're doing an exercise while you're doing something, your partner's doing something else, and then you swap over. Or even small groups where you either do the same exercise at the same time or even three, like a subset of a circuit. So you have your circuit, you have three people in a small rotation and then they rotate and then they do those three exercises as well. Or you can do things like a you go, I go scenario where someone rests while another person exercises for motivation and cheering them on, and to allow that rest break as well. So another thing we need to think of is the purpose of these sessions. So, whether you're training AFL Women's Academy versus F45, there's going to be very different goals there. So identifying the purpose and the goals of the entire group is really important. Are you in this group trying to build teamwork? Are you trying to build just enjoyment and engagement with exercise? Is this a specific strength and conditioning workout? Is this targeted to weight loss? So finding a group purpose and being able to identify and discuss that with everyone so that they have their why behind it, and making sure that you're discussing that why. And then you talk about how to achieve it, which would be the session type, and then what you're doing, which is the actual obvious exercises within that session, and really outlining how that fits into a broader spectrum of a complete periodized program for them. On top of this, we also want to look at outlining the whole session. So sometimes you can, different options. So you can outline the entire session, probably briefly in terms of, we have a warm-up, then we have our strength piece, our conditioning piece, our cool down. And you may demonstrate every single exercise within the warm-up and then get them to go and do that. Come back, then you talk through the strength components, then get them to do that, come back, same repeat for the rest of the program. I've also seen it been done where they literally outline and demonstrate every single thing at the start, especially if it's a higher paced workout where it's maybe half an hour of non-stop and there's a timer on and things like that, so that they've got a demo at the start, and obviously you're going around correcting and cueing people anyway. Other things that we want to talk about is voice and body language. Really important, probably more so important in a group than a one-on-one setting, because you can really gauge someone when you're just one-on-one having a conversation with them. You've probably noticed this. If you're talking to someone, you can sort of see if they're understanding what you're saying or asking of them or not. Probably with the practicals that we have done previously, you sort of can see the cogs tick over. But if there's a group of 20, 30 people, trying to gauge that with everyone can become a little bit more challenging. So making sure that your voice is projected really loud, clearly and audibly, and the projection of that is adequate enough for the space that you're in. So, is it an outdoor session and there's kids screaming in the park versus are you in an enclosed sort of functional training facility where you've got everyone's attention? It's pretty easy to manage that. Body language and then positioning is also really important. So, when you're demonstrating exercises, you need to make sure everybody can see you, and that is your responsibility to tell them that if they cannot, they need to move into a place where they can. And then body language throughout the session, making sure generally we want open body language, we don't want to be closed off. And so I guess we're going to do this exercise, and if you're looking down and you're sort of hunched and rounded, that can really portray a lack of confidence and even a lack of skill set or ability, even if it has literally nothing to do with your actual education level or anything like that. As a coach, this sort of closed off positioning and posture can demonstrate that to some people and then be a little bit off-putting. So working on being open with your posture and talking to the group as opposed to maybe just talking to specifically at one person. The other thing that we want to talk about is gaining attention. So depending on where you are, again, will depend on how this needs to be done. Will you talk about this at the start? Maybe you would use a whistle if you were out in a park, or people had to run 30 meters away from you and then you wanted them to repeat their second sprint in a minute, and yelling at them is probably not the best, most audible cue. Also inside facilities or on your phone and things like that, you could use a beeper or a timer. So do you have something set up on the wall that has a countdown timer so people can see how long's left, or are you going to let them know? But using some sort of cue or notice so that people know how long's left in the session, when you need to maybe regroup and sort of readdress the next component of your session. The next thing I want to talk about is cueing and correcting in a group. This can become really challenging, and I've experienced this as well, because you want to correct all the nuances of everyone's individual technique and it's all different. So what I've learnt to do is if you see someone doing something that you'd like to correct, instead of going up to them specifically, there's probably a lot of people who may be doing that. And again, this would depend if you're everyone doing different exercises, or if everyone's doing the same thing in a big group. But sometimes if they are doing the same thing at the same time, I'd be like, guys, just remember, you see Susie, she's doing her, her squats and her knees are buckling in and touching at the bottom. So you'd be like, guys, just remember when we're squatting, we want our knees out nice and wide. We want to be making sure we keep our torso upright. Just something simple like that. Susie will know you're talking to her about it, but you're not specifically targeting her, so she doesn't feel like maybe you're having a go or attacking her or specifically isolating her out, because you haven't said, Susie, knees out. Which, again, is another thing that can be important, and depending on the group, you've obviously got to gauge that. But, some people, it is really nice to have the individualization, have your name recognized. People like to hear their name, and they like to know that, even if there's a big group, that you've actually individually paid attention to people. So it may be a point where you say, James, really good job, love the hip hinging, or whatever it is that they're doing. And as you sort of move through the session, you pull people out individually in a positive manner so that they know that they're doing, the right thing, and they're being acknowledged as an individual, despite the fact you have a group session going on. Then what else have we got? Space and equipment. So depending on if you're doing an outdoor session or you've got a whole gym available to you, you want to sort of set up the space in a way that sort of flows. So, you don't want to go, if you have a circuit, you don't want to go straight from squats all the way over this end of the gym to the deadlifts all the way over here to the bench press over there. So making it so that they're not sort of running between stations if there's a time restriction on this is really important, so that you've got your space set up and the equipment's obviously available, ready to go. Then with that comes up the topic of if you are generally pairing people up, do you want to pair someone with similar abilities and strength levels? Do you maybe want to make sure that the newbie in the class is paired up with someone more experienced who sort of like knows the ropes and can act as a bit of a leader and help that person out, so that you're not having to go around and there's a group of beginners over here who just really need a lot of your help and then going somewhere else? And then the other thing is, maybe you want to pair someone up with someone who is new, or you think, maybe these people would work well together for whatever reason, or maybe, Jane is a new person to class and she's got really similar interests that to Sarah, and so you pair those two up together to help build community, build a friendship, and someone that they feel safe around and can come back to for the next class. Lots to talk about. So again, next would be timing. So with circuits or any sort of, I guess, group training, you need to know how you're going to time it. And this is probably the biggest thing, because if you are going, okay, I want 4 sets of 10 reps on this with a 1.5 minute rest, you need a group that's really capable of self-regulating. So typically what happens is you'll either say, okay, this is what I want you to do in this time, take approximately this much rest. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to go away and do that, and I'm just going to walk around and help facilitate. Those are the generally more advanced groups. That'd be like your strength and conditioning, rugby league team or something like that. Whereas if you're at your functional training, typically what's going to happen is you'll say, okay, it's 45 seconds on and it's 15 seconds off, and you need to change stations in that time. And so they know who they're following and they know where they're going for their next station. So clarifying that, getting justification, and making sure you go, hey, James, which station are you at next? Or who are you following that was the station before you? And then I guess the last thing for group training, I know this is a lot to take in, so you may want to take some notes, jot it down, is that we would like you to experience this. So there are a lot of F45, FitStop, any other sort of group training facilities that are offering and do offer like week free trials and are doing that virtually at the moment. So I would urge you all to sign up to those and actually try it from a client perspective, because I think one of the best ways to learn is by being the student yourself. So as students yourselves, to be able to put yourself in those environments and sort of have a look and maybe have a little checklist. So, you know, the purpose of you going and doing these is obviously to feel the workout and go through it. But as a student, the goal is to understand maybe what worked well, what didn't work so well. Was their voice projection good? Did they really set up well? Did they explain everything properly? Did they come around and individualize things when appropriate? So, recommendation 1, sign up to at least one of F45, FitStop, whatever, and actually go to and attend some of their virtual classes and see how that's run. And then secondly to that would be to write your own mock group training session. So you can sort of set it up and go, okay, well, if my goal was to train a team of elite netball players, there'd probably be, there's 7 players on a court, there's probably 14 of them because they have backups. How would I split that up? Would I put all the centers and the goal attacks together, or you know, would I split defense and offense, or do I split them based on something else? And just sort of have your own go at planning a session for that. The other thing that I did when I went through uni, which I found really, really helpful, was I trained my family. Now, my family was quite large and we had space to sort of do that with every week. Obviously, at the moment, in person, you can only train who's sort of around at your house with you. But even just training a couple of people and sort of figuring out the dynamics of that, I really learnt quite a lot from doing that, because things come up like, oh, but I can't do this exercise because my back hurts, or I can't get the range of motion with this one. So thinking on the fly and those questions that you may not have considered will come up for you. So that's a massive, massive one that helped me, and I would highly recommend that if you have that available. If not, the other option could be that you reach out to your friends or other people in your cohort, and maybe, you know, like between 4 of you, you each plan one session of the week, and then you Zoom each other, and one person is the coach and the other 3 people are clients, and you're going to run them through your group session so that you can get some actual hands-on learning with this sort of stuff. Because I understand how hard this must be, sort of sitting on your own, being like, I can't get to a gym, I can't do any of this stuff. But the more that you practice it, and the more that you go through and talk through your processes and fumble through it and, you know, screw up and make mistakes and realize what works and what doesn't work in these sort of low pressure environments, the better that you will be when you get back into a gym scenario or you train your first client. So I guess that's it for today. Probably a fair bit to take in, but, you know, go back through this, write down some notes, and then remember our 2 recommendations are signing up for your own virtual training or creating mock group training scenarios for people available to you. Hope you found this helpful.